The morning sun filtered through the windows of Happy Tail's Animal Rescue, casting long shadows across the concrete floors. In the farthest corner of the shelter, a small golden-brown dog pressed herself against the cold wall, her body trembling despite the warm California weather. This was Bella, a 3-year-old mixed breed who had arrived at the shelter 6 months ago, and in all that time she had barely moved from that same spot. Sarah Mitchell, the shelter manager, approached Bella's kennel with slow, careful steps. She had been working with rescue animals for over 15 years, but Bella's case broke her heart in ways she hadn't experienced before. The dog's previous owners had surrendered her with little explanation, mentioning only that she was too nervous and couldn't handle their lifestyle. What they hadn't mentioned were the signs of neglect that the veterinarian had discovered during Bella's initial examination. "Good morning, sweet girl," Sarah whispered softly, crouching down several feet away from the kennel door. Bella's ears flattened against her head, and she pressed herself even further into the corner, making herself as small as possible. Her dark brown eyes darted nervously around the room, never making direct contact with Sarah's gentle gaze. The shelter staff had tried everything they could think of to help Bella adjust. They offered her favorite treats, played soft music, and even brought in other calm dogs to show her that the shelter was a safe place. Nothing worked. Bella would eat only when no one was watching, and she refused to go outside for walks, instead relieving herself in the far corner of her kennel and then retreating to her usual spot. Dr. Rodriguez, the shelter's veterinarian, had examined Bella thoroughly and found no physical injuries, but the emotional scars were clearly deep. "She's been traumatized," he explained to Sarah during one of their weekly meetings. "Some dogs recover quickly with love and patience, but others need something special, something that speaks to their soul." As the weeks turned into months, potential adopters would walk past Bella's kennel, their hearts initially drawn to her beautiful coat and soulful eyes. But when they saw how she cowered and shook at their approach, most moved on to the more social and interactive dogs. A few brave families had tried to adopt her, but each time, Bella's fear became so overwhelming that the adoptions were called off within days. The shelter volunteers had started calling her Shadow because she seemed to fade into the darkness of her kennel, becoming almost invisible. Maria, a volunteer who had been coming to the shelter for 3 years, often sat outside Bella's kennel reading books aloud, hoping the sound of a human voice might eventually comfort her. "She's listening," Maria would tell Sarah. "I can see her ears perk up just slightly when I read the funny parts." One particularly difficult day, when another adoption had failed and Bella had refused to eat for 24 hours, Sarah found herself sitting on the floor outside the kennel, fighting back tears. The shelter was overcrowded, and there was pressure to make space for new arrivals. Some of the board members had quietly suggested that maybe it was time to consider other options for Bella. "I won't give up on you," Sarah whispered to the trembling dog. "Somewhere out there is someone who will understand you, someone who will have the patience to show you that the world isn't scary anymore." That same afternoon, 12-year-old Marcus Thompson was arguing with his parents in the family's kitchen. He had been asking for a dog for 2 years, and his parents had finally agreed to visit some shelters, but with conditions. The dog had to be well-behaved, house-trained, and good with children. Marcus had seen dozens of dogs online, but none of them felt right to him. "We're not getting a dog that's going to tear up the house or bite someone," his father David said firmly. "This is a big responsibility, Marcus. We need a dog that's already trained and socialized." Marcus understood his parents' concerns, but something inside him felt drawn to the idea of helping an animal that really needed it. He had always been the quiet kid at school, the one who sat with new students at lunch and helped classmates who were struggling with homework. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, often praised him for his patience and kindness, qualities that seemed unusual in someone so young. "Can we at least go look?" Marcus pleaded. "Maybe there's a dog there that just needs a chance." His mother, Jennifer, saw the determination in her son's eyes and felt her resolve softening. Marcus was their only child, and he had been asking for a pet for so long. Perhaps it was time to at least explore their options. "We'll go this weekend," she finally agreed. "But remember, Marcus, we're just looking. We're not committing to anything until we find the right fit for our family." Meanwhile, back at the shelter, Bella's situation was becoming more desperate. She had developed a skin condition from the stress, and despite the staff's best efforts, she was losing weight. Dr. Rodriguez had started her on anxiety medication, but it would take weeks to see any improvement, if it worked at all. She needs a miracle, Sarah confided to her husband that evening as they sat on their porch. I've never seen a dog so broken, so afraid of everything and everyone. But there's something in her eyes, something that tells me she wants to trust again. She just doesn't know how. The next morning brought new challenges. A family had come to look at dogs and had been interested in the kennel next to Bella's. But their excited children had pressed against Bella's cage, causing her to panic so severely that she had injured herself trying to escape. The small cut on her paw wasn't serious, but it was another reminder of how fragile her mental state had become. As Sarah cleaned and bandaged Bella's paw, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. For just a moment, when Sarah's hand was gently holding her paw, Bella had stopped shaking. It was brief, maybe only a few seconds, but it was the first time in 6 months that the dog had shown any sign of accepting human contact. "Did you see that?" Sarah asked Maria, who had been helping hold Bella steady. She actually relaxed for a moment. Maria nodded, her eyes filling with hope. Maybe she's finally ready to start healing. Maybe she just needed to realize that not all human touch means pain. That small moment of progress filled the shelter staff with renewed determination. They adjusted Bella's care routine, spending more time simply sitting near her kennel without trying to interact, letting her get used to human presence without pressure. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Bella began to show tiny signs of curiosity about the world beyond her corner. The weekend was approaching, and with it, the Thompson family's visit to Happy Tails Animal Rescue. None of them knew that this visit would change not just their lives, but the life of a small, frightened dog who had almost given up on the possibility of love and trust. In her kennel, Bella continued to watch the world from her corner, unaware that her miracle was just days away from walking through the shelter doors. Saturday morning arrived with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of jasmine through the open windows of Happy Tails Animal Rescue. Marcus Thompson woke up before his alarm, excitement bubbling in his chest despite his parents' warnings about not getting his hopes up. He had spent the night before researching dog care, and had even cleaned out a corner of his room where a dog bed might fit, just in case. The Thompson family arrived at the shelter just as Sarah was finishing her morning rounds. She greeted them warmly, immediately noticing how Marcus's eyes lit up at the sound of barking from the back kennels. His parents looked more cautious, clipboard in hand with a list of questions about temperament, training, and health records. "We'd like to see some dogs that would be good for a first-time family," Jennifer Thompson explained. "Something calm and well-socialized. Marcus has been wanting a pet for years, but we want to make sure we choose wisely." Sarah nodded understandingly and began leading them toward the main kennel area where the more adoptable dogs were housed. These were the success stories, the dogs who had overcome their past traumas and were ready for new families. She pointed out Rex, a friendly Labrador mix who immediately came to the front of his kennel with his tail wagging, and Luna, a gentle older dog who had been returned through no fault of her own when her previous family moved overseas. Marcus petted each dog and smiled politely, but Sarah noticed something was missing. There was no spark, no special connection that she usually saw when the right family met the right pet. His parents seemed pleased with the well-behaved animals, taking notes and asking practical questions about feeding schedules and exercise needs. As they walked through the main kennels, Marcus lagged slightly behind his parents, something drawing his attention to the sounds coming from the back section of the shelter. "What's back there?" he asked, pointing toward the area where Bella and the other special needs animals were housed. "Oh, that's our quiet section," Sarah explained carefully. "We keep some of our more sensitive animals there. They're wonderful dogs, but they need extra patience and understanding. Most families prefer to start with dogs from our main adoption floor." Something in her tone made Marcus curious rather than deterred. "Can we see them too? I mean, if they need homes, shouldn't we at least look?" David Thompson checked his watch. "We've already seen plenty of good options, Marcus. Let's not complicate things." But Marcus had already started walking toward the back section, drawn by an instinct he couldn't explain. Sarah exchanged a glance with his parents, then decided to follow. "I suppose it couldn't hurt to show you a few more," she said, though she was careful not to raise expectations. The back section was quieter, with softer lighting and fewer kennels. Sarah explained that these dogs often needed more space and less stimulation to feel comfortable. She introduced them to Charlie. an older dog recovering from surgery, and Daisy, a sweet pit bull mix who was afraid of men due to her past experiences. Marcus showed genuine interest in each animal, asking thoughtful questions about their histories and what they needed to feel safe. His parents were surprised by his mature understanding of the dog's situations, and Sarah found herself impressed by the young boy's empathy. Then they reached Bella's kennel. She was in her usual spot, pressed against the back wall with her head tucked low. At the sound of approaching footsteps, she had made herself even smaller, her whole body trembling. Sarah almost walked past without mentioning her, knowing that Bella's condition often upset visitors, especially children. But Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. "What about her?" he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. He had crouched down to Bella's eye level, though he was still several feet away from the kennel. "That's Bella," Sarah said gently. "She's been with us for 6 months. She's had a very difficult time trusting people. She's not really ready for adoption yet." Marcus didn't move from his crouched position. He simply sat down cross-legged on the floor as if he had all the time in the world. "What happened to her?" Sarah explained Bella's history as delicately as she could, emphasizing that while her past was sad, there was always hope for healing. She watched Marcus carefully, expecting him to lose interest like most children did when they realized Bella wouldn't come play with them or show affection. Instead, Marcus remained perfectly still, just observing. "She's scared," he said simply. "But look at her eyes. She keeps looking over here just for a second, then looking away. She's curious about us, but she doesn't know if we're safe." His parents had grown quiet, surprised by their son's patience and insight. Jennifer found herself crouching down next to Marcus, seeing Bella through his eyes. The dog was indeed glancing their way occasionally, her ears twitching at the sound of their voices. "The thing is," Marcus continued, speaking more to Bella than to his family, "being scared doesn't mean you're broken. It just means someone hurt you and you're being smart by being careful. But maybe if you had enough time, you could learn that some people are different." David Thompson felt something shift in his chest as he watched his son. He had always been proud of Marcus's kindness, but this was something deeper. This was wisdom beyond the boy's years. Sarah found herself holding her breath. In 6 months, no one had sat so calmly near Bella's kennel without trying to force interaction. Most people wanted immediate results, wanted the dog to come to them and show gratitude. Marcus seemed to understand instinctively that healing couldn't be rushed. "She's beautiful," Jennifer whispered. And for the first time, she truly saw Bella as more than just a problem to be solved. The dog's golden coat caught the light, and despite her fear, there was an undeniable intelligence in her dark eyes. Marcus slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a granola bar he had brought for a snack. He broke off a small piece and, instead of trying to hand it to Bella, he simply placed it on the floor halfway between himself and the kennel, then moved back to his original position. "You don't have to take it," he said softly to Bella. "I just thought you might be hungry. I'll just sit here for a while if that's okay." 20 minutes passed. Marcus's parents expected him to grow bored and want to leave, but he seemed content to sit quietly, occasionally talking to Bella in gentle tones about nothing in particular. He told her about his school, his favorite books, and how he had always wanted a dog who could be his best friend. Bella's trembling had gradually decreased, and while she hadn't moved from her corner, she was no longer pressing herself against the wall. Her ears were up, clearly listening to Marcus's voice, and her breathing had become more relaxed. Sarah had never seen anything like it. Other volunteers had started to notice and were gathering at a distance, watching in amazement as Bella showed more engagement with this young boy than she had with anyone in months. Then something extraordinary happened. Bella took a single, tentative step forward. It was tiny, barely noticeable, but to everyone watching it might as well have been a giant leap. She stopped, looking at Marcus as if gauging his reaction. Marcus smiled but didn't move. "That's okay, girl. You can come closer if you want to, or you can stay right there. Whatever feels safe to you." Bella took another small step, then another. She was still several feet away from the kennel door, but she was no longer in her corner. Her nose twitched as she caught the scent of the granola bar, but her eyes remained fixed on Marcus, I think, Marcus said quietly to his parents, never taking his eyes off Bella. "I think I found my dog." David and Jennifer Thompson looked at each other, both thinking of all the practical concerns they had discussed. This wasn't the easy adoption they had planned. This would require patience, possibly professional help, and certainly a lot of love and understanding. But as they watched their son connect with this broken, frightened animal in a way that seemed almost magical, they realized that maybe the right choice wasn't always the easy choice. "Are you sure, sweetheart?" Jennifer asked gently. "Bella is going to need a lot of help to feel safe and happy." Marcus finally looked up at his parents, his face serious but determined. "Mom, Dad, what if nobody ever gave me a chance because I was quiet or different? Bella just needs someone who won't give up on her. I won't give up on her." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as she watched this 12-year-old boy show more understanding and commitment than many adults she had encountered. This was exactly what Bella needed, but would it be enough? The conversation that followed Marcus's declaration lasted nearly 2 hours. Sarah sat with the Thompson family in her office, explaining everything they needed to know about adopting a traumatized rescue dog. She was honest about the challenges ahead, the possible setbacks, and the patience that would be required. She also explained that Bella might never be a normal dog in the traditional sense. Some dogs who have been through trauma like Bella's always carry a bit of that fear with them, Sarah explained gently. She may always be more sensitive to loud noises, sudden movements, or strangers. This isn't a short-term commitment to helping her heal. This is a lifetime commitment to loving her exactly as she is. Marcus listened to every word, asking thoughtful questions about Bella's medical needs, her anxiety medication, and the best ways to help her feel safe. His parents were impressed by how seriously he was taking the responsibility, but they still had concerns. "What if we can't handle it?" David asked honestly. "What if we try our best, but Bella doesn't improve or even gets worse? We don't want to fail her." Sarah appreciated their honesty. "That's exactly why I think you might be the right family for her," she said. "You're going into this with realistic expectations and genuine commitment. Most failed adoptions happen when people expect quick results or underestimate the work involved." She explained that the shelter would provide ongoing support, including access to an animal behaviorist, emergency phone consultations, and even temporary boarding if the family ever needed a break. They would also start with a 2-week trial period to make sure the match was right for everyone. "During those 2 weeks," Sarah continued, "we'll have regular check-ins, and if at any point you feel overwhelmed, we can reassess. But I have to tell you, watching Marcus with Bella today, I've never been more hopeful about one of our difficult cases." The family spent another hour at the shelter, with Marcus returning to sit by Bella's kennel while his parents completed paperwork. This time, Bella had moved even closer to the kennel door, though she was still well out of reach. She had also eaten the piece of granola bar Marcus had left for her, which was the first time she had eaten while people were present. Dr. Rodriguez joined them to discuss Bella's medical needs and the adjustment period she would need. "The first few days at your home will probably be the hardest," he warned. "She'll be in completely unfamiliar territory, and her anxiety might spike. But if she's already responding to Marcus like this, that's a very promising sign." 3 days later, the Thompson family returned to take Bella home. They had spent those days preparing their house, removing anything that could be dangerous if Bella panicked, and setting up a quiet space where she could retreat if she felt overwhelmed. Marcus had researched everything he could about helping fearful dogs, filling a notebook with tips and strategies. The car ride home was tense. Bella sat in her carrier, panting heavily and shaking despite the mild weather. Jennifer sat in the back seat near the carrier, speaking softly to try to comfort her while Marcus rode in front, turning around frequently to check on their new family member. "She's going to be okay," he kept repeating, more to reassure himself than anyone else. "Once she sees our house and realizes it's safe, she'll start to relax." But when they arrived home and opened the carrier, Bella immediately bolted to the farthest corner of the living room and pressed herself against the wall, just as she had done at the shelter. The Thompsons stood in their entryway, suddenly feeling the weight of what they had undertaken. "Maybe we should give her some space," Jennifer suggested, remembering Sarah's advice about not overwhelming Bella with attention. Marcus wanted nothing more than to go sit beside Bella and comfort her, but he forced himself to be patient. The family went about their normal evening routine, talking quietly and moving slowly, always keeping Bella in their peripheral vision but not staring at her directly. Bella didn't move from her corner for the first 6 hours. She refused food, water, and showed no interest in the comfortable dog bed they had placed nearby. As night fell, The Thompson family faced their first crisis of confidence. Maybe this was a mistake, David whispered to Jennifer as they prepared for bed. She's terrified. Are we just making her more traumatized by forcing her to be here? But Marcus overheard and appeared in their doorway, still fully dressed. I'm going to sleep in the living room tonight, he announced. Not close to her, just where she can see me, so she knows someone is watching out for her. His parents started to object, but something in Marcus's determination stopped them. Against their better judgment, they allowed their 12-year-old son to camp out on the couch with a sleeping bag, positioned where he could see Bella but far enough away that he wouldn't add to her stress. Around midnight, Marcus woke to a soft sound. He lay very still, listening, and realized it was Bella drinking water. In the dim light from the hallway, he could see her silhouette at the water bowl they had placed near her corner. The moment she noticed he was awake, she froze. It's okay, Marcus whispered. I'm just sleeping here. You can drink all the water you want. Bella stared at him for a long moment, then returned to drinking. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. The next morning brought new challenges. Bella had relieved herself during the night, and while they had expected accidents, the cleanup process terrified her. Every movement, every sound of cleaning supplies sent her into fresh waves of panic. By the time Marcus left for school, both his parents were questioning their decision. Call the shelter, David suggested to Jennifer. Maybe we need to take this slower, try some visits first instead of a full adoption. But Jennifer had been watching Marcus that morning. He had sat by Bella's corner for 20 minutes before school, reading aloud from one of his favorite books, just as Maria had done at the shelter. Bella had actually lifted her head and seemed to listen. There was something happening between the boy and the dog, something that gave Jennifer hope. When Marcus came home from school, he found his mother sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open to the shelter's website. Honey, we need to talk, she began. Marcus's face fell. You want to take her back? We're just wondering if maybe we moved too fast. Bella is so scared and we don't know if we're helping or making things worse. Marcus set down his backpack and walked over to check on Bella. She was still in her corner, but her eyes followed his movement. Hi, Bella, he said softly. How was your day? Mine was okay, but I kept thinking about you. To his family's amazement, Bella's tail gave the tiniest wag. It was barely perceptible, but it was definitely a wag. Did you see that? Marcus called excitedly to his mother. She wagged her tail. She's happy to see me. Jennifer came over to look, and indeed, Bella's tail was moving slightly whenever Marcus spoke. It wasn't the enthusiastic whole-body wag of a confident dog, but it was communication. It was hope. That evening, the family had a serious discussion about Bella's progress and their commitment. They called Sarah, who reminded them that healing from trauma was never linear. There would be good days and bad days, progress and setbacks. The question you need to ask yourselves, Sarah said, is whether you're seeing any signs that Bella is beginning to trust. If she's eating, drinking, and showing any positive response to your presence, then you're on the right track. They were. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Bella was beginning to show signs of adjustment. She had moved her sleeping spot a few inches away from the wall. She had eaten a small amount of food while Marcus was in the room. And that tail wag, small as it was, represented a breakthrough. One more week, David agreed. But Marcus, if this becomes too stressful for Bella or our family, we'll need to reconsider. Marcus nodded solemnly. One more week. But Dad, I think she's going to surprise us. That night, Marcus again slept in the living room. But this time, when he woke up in the middle of the night, Bella had moved. She was still in her corner, but she was facing him instead of facing the wall. And when their eyes met in the darkness, she didn't look away. It was a small step, but for Marcus, it felt like they had just climbed a mountain together. The second week brought unexpected developments. Marcus had returned to sleeping in his own bed, but he had established a routine that seemed to give Bella comfort. Every morning before school, he would sit on the floor about 6 feet away from her corner and read aloud from whatever book he was currently enjoying. He never tried to pet her or call her over, but simply shared his world with her through stories. Bella began to anticipate these reading sessions. Jennifer noticed that around the time Marcus usually came downstairs, Bella would position herself where she could see him clearly, her ears perked up and alert. The terrified dog who had cowered from every sound was now actively listening to a 12-year-old boy read about adventures in far-off places. She's actually following the story, Marcus told his parents one morning. When I read the exciting parts, her ears go up even more. And yesterday, when the main character was sad, she whimpered a little, like she understood. Dr. Rodriguez had warned them that Bella's anxiety medication would take several weeks to reach its full effectiveness. But even without it, she was showing remarkable progress. She had ventured out of her corner to explore the living room during the night, and they could tell because her water bowl had been moved and there were paw prints on the carpet leading to different areas of the room. The real breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Marcus had come home from school soaked from the storm and was changing into dry clothes when he heard his mother gasp from the kitchen. "Marcus," Jennifer called softly. "Come here, but move very slowly." He crept to the kitchen doorway and couldn't believe what he saw. Bella had left her corner and was standing in the middle of the living room, looking directly at the spot where Marcus usually sat for reading time. She wasn't cowering or shaking. She was simply waiting. "I think she's looking for you," Jennifer whispered. "She's been standing there for about 5 minutes just looking at your usual spot." Marcus felt his heart swell with emotion. Very carefully, he walked to his normal reading position and sat down cross-legged on the floor. Bella's entire body seemed to relax when she saw him, and for the first time since coming home, she moved voluntarily closer to a human being. She took 3 steps toward Marcus, then sat down, still several feet away but clearly choosing to be in his presence. "Hi, beautiful girl," Marcus said softly, pulling his current book from his backpack. "I'm sorry I'm late. It was raining really hard, and I had to wait for Mom to pick me up. Should I tell you about what happened to the characters while I was gone?" As he began to read, Bella lay down in her new spot, resting her chin on her paws but keeping her eyes fixed on Marcus's face. Jennifer watched from the kitchen, tears streaming down her cheeks as she witnessed her son's patience finally being rewarded. That evening, David came home from work to find his family in the living room, but something was different. Bella was still maintaining her distance, but she was clearly part of the family group, rather than hiding from it. She watched David's movements carefully, but without the overwhelming terror she had shown in her first days with them. "She's been out of her corner most of the afternoon," Jennifer reported. She even walked to the window and looked outside when she heard the mail truck. David sat down carefully in his usual chair, moving slowly so as not to startle Bella. To his amazement, she didn't retreat. Instead, she observed him with what could almost be described as curiosity. Over the weekend, Bella's world continued to expand. She began exploring the house at night, and they could track her progress by the subtle changes they noticed each morning. A throw pillow moved slightly, paw prints on the bathroom tile, the position of her food bowl shifted. She was claiming the space as her own, bit by bit. Marcus spent hours researching dog psychology and training techniques, but he seemed to instinctively understand that Bella needed to make choices for herself rather than being pushed into interactions. He continued his reading routine, but also began sitting in different spots around the house, always with a book, always calm and patient. "She's learning that I'm safe no matter where we are," he explained to his parents. "If I'm always in the same spot, she might only feel comfortable in that one place. But if she learns that I'm the same person everywhere, then the whole house becomes safer." His insight proved correct. By the end of the second week, Bella was following Marcus from room to room, always maintaining her distance but clearly wanting to be near him. She had even discovered the back door and would sit looking through the glass at the garden, though she showed no interest in actually going outside. The 2-week trial period was coming to an end, and Sarah scheduled a home visit to check on Bella's progress. When she arrived, she could hardly believe the transformation. The dog who had lived in terror for 6 months at the shelter was moving freely around the Thompson home, investigating Sarah's arrival with alertness rather than panic. "This is incredible," Sarah said, watching as Bella observed their conversation from across the room. "She's not hiding, she's not shaking, and look at her body language. Her ears are up, her tail isn't tucked, and she's actively watching what's happening around her. This is a completely different dog." She explained that while Bella still had a long way to go before she could be considered fully recovered, the progress she had made in just 2 weeks was extraordinary. Most dogs with her level of trauma take months to show this kind of improvement, if they ever do. Marcus has given her something that all the professional training in the world can't provide. "What's that?" Jennifer asked. "Unconditional patience and the belief that she's worth waiting for," Sarah replied. Marcus never once asked Bella to be different than she was. He just showed up every day and proved that he wasn't going anywhere. As if summoned by their conversation, Bella stood up from her resting place and took several steps toward the group. Everyone held their breath as she approached closer to humans than she ever had before. She stopped about 3 feet away from Marcus and sat down, looking directly at him. Marcus smiled but didn't move. "Hi, sweetheart. Are you saying hello to our visitor?" Bella's tail gave several small wags, and then she did something that left everyone speechless. She lowered her front end in a play bow, the universal dog signal for, "I want to interact with you." It lasted only a few seconds before she returned to a sitting position, but the message was clear. Bella was not just healing. She was beginning to remember how to be a dog. Sarah wiped away tears as she completed her evaluation forms. "I don't think we need to discuss returning Bella to the shelter," she said with a smile. "I think we need to discuss making this adoption official." That night, Marcus called his best friend Jake to share the news. "She playbowed," he said excitedly. "That means she wants to be friends. It means she's not just surviving anymore, she's actually starting to be happy." As Marcus talked on the phone, Bella listened from her new favorite spot near the couch. For the first time since arriving at the Thompson home, she closed her eyes and fell asleep while humans were awake and moving around the house. It was the ultimate sign of trust, and Marcus noticed it immediately. "Jake, I have to go," he whispered into the phone. "Bella just fell asleep, and she's never done that when we were awake before. She finally feels safe enough to really rest." Marcus sat in the quiet living room, watching Bella's peaceful breathing and feeling overwhelmed with gratitude. 2 weeks ago, he had been just a kid who wanted a dog. Now he was a boy who had learned that love isn't always easy, that healing takes time, and that sometimes the most broken things become the most beautiful when given the right care. Bella shifted slightly in her sleep, and for just a moment Marcus could swear he saw her smile. 3 weeks into Bella's new life, the Thompson household had settled into a comfortable routine. Bella had claimed the living room as her territory, and had even begun sleeping on the couch at night instead of on the floor in her corner. She followed Marcus everywhere, maintaining her careful distance but clearly considering herself part of his pack. The morning that changed everything started like any other. Marcus sat in his usual spot reading aloud from Where the Red Fern Grows, a story about a boy and his hunting dogs. Bella lay on the couch, listening intently as she always did. But something was different. Instead of resting with her head on her paws, she was sitting upright, alert and engaged. As Marcus read about Billy's determination to train his dogs, Bella began to inch forward on the couch. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she moved closer to the edge where Marcus sat on the floor below. Marcus noticed but forced himself not to react, continuing to read in his calm, steady voice. Then it happened. Bella stretched her neck down and gently touched her nose to Marcus's shoulder. The contact lasted only a second before she pulled back, but it was the first time Bella had voluntarily touched a human being since arriving at the shelter 8 months ago. Marcus's voice caught in his throat and he had to pause his reading to compose himself. "Thank you, Bella," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for trusting me." Jennifer had witnessed the moment from the kitchen and had to grip the counter to steady herself. She quietly called David at work to share the news, both of them understanding that they had just witnessed something miraculous. Over the next few days, Bella became bolder with her affection. She would touch Marcus's arm with her nose when he sat down to read, and once, she even rested her chin on his knee for several seconds before pulling away. Each contact was brief and on her terms, but the progression was undeniable. Dr. Rodriguez had scheduled a follow-up appointment to check on Bella's progress and adjust her anxiety medication. When the Thompson family arrived at the veterinary clinic with Bella in her carrier, they expected the usual struggle of getting her into the building. Instead, while Bella was clearly nervous, she didn't panic. She stayed close to Marcus and even allowed Dr. Rodriguez to examine her without sedation. "This is remarkable," Dr. Rodriguez said, listening to Bella's heart rate, which was elevated but not at the dangerous levels they had seen before. "Her stress response is completely different. She's still anxious, but she's not in survival mode anymore." He explained that they could begin reducing Bella's anxiety medication gradually, which was something he had never expected to recommend so soon. The medication was meant to take the edge off her panic so she could begin healing. But Marcus has given her something even more powerful than medicine. He's given her a reason to trust again. The real test came when they returned home and Marcus had to leave for school. Previously, Bella would retreat to her corner whenever Marcus left, but now she positioned herself by the front window where she could watch for his return. Jennifer found her there throughout the day, patient and alert, like a faithful guard keeping watch. "She's not just waiting," Jennifer told David that evening. "She's confident he's coming back. She knows she belongs here now." Marcus had started inviting his best friend Jake over to meet Bella, but they approached the introduction very carefully. Jake was instructed to ignore Bella completely during his first few visits, just allowing her to get used to his presence and voice. On his third visit, something wonderful happened. Jake was sitting on the floor with Marcus, both boys working on a science project, when Bella approached them. She sniffed Jake's backpack, then his shoes, and finally very gently touched her nose to his hand before quickly moving away. "She just said hello to me," Jake whispered excitedly. "That was like a dog handshake." Marcus beamed with pride. "She's learning that my friends are safe too. She's getting braver every day." The breakthrough moment that everyone had been hoping for came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Marcus was lying on the floor reading, as had become his habit, when Bella did something unprecedented. She climbed down from the couch and lay down next to him, close enough that their bodies were almost touching. Marcus held his breath, afraid to move and break the spell. Bella settled herself comfortably, resting her head near Marcus's shoulder, and for the first time in months, both boy and dog relaxed completely together. "Mom?" Marcus called softly to Jennifer, who was folding laundry nearby. "Look." Jennifer looked over and felt her heart swell. Marcus and Bella were lying side by side like old friends, both peaceful and content. It was the picture of trust she had dreamed of, but hadn't dared to hope for so soon. "Can I pet her?" Marcus asked quietly, not wanting to push too hard but sensing that Bella might be ready. "Very slowly," Jennifer advised. "Let her see your hand coming." Marcus slowly moved his hand toward Bella's head, talking to her softly the entire time. "Is this okay, girl? You can move away if you want to." Bella watched his hand approach but didn't move away. When Marcus's fingers finally made contact with the soft fur on her head, she closed her eyes and leaned slightly into his touch. It was the first real pet she had received since her rescue, and instead of fear, she showed pure contentment. Marcus stroked her head gently for several minutes, both of them enjoying the simple pleasure of physical affection. When he finally stopped, Bella looked up at him with an expression that could only be described as grateful. "I love you too, Bella," Marcus whispered, and as if she understood, Bella's tail wagged enthusiastically for the first time since coming home. That evening, the Thompson family called Sarah to share the news of Bella's breakthrough. Sarah listened with tears in her eyes as they described the petting session and Bella's obvious joy. "You've given her back her ability to love," Sarah said. "That's something we thought might be lost forever. Marcus, you should be so proud of what you've accomplished." But Marcus didn't see it as an accomplishment. To him, loving Bella had been the easiest thing in the world. "She was always ready to love," he told Sarah. "She just needed to know it was safe." That night, for the first time since coming home, Bella slept on Marcus's bed. She curled up at the foot, maintaining some space but clearly wanting to be close to her boy. Marcus lay awake for a long time, listening to her peaceful breathing and marveling at how far they had both come. When he finally drifted off to sleep, his hand was gently resting on Bella's back and she hadn't moved away. They were no longer a boy and a broken dog learning to coexist. They were best friends, finally able to show each other the love they had both been waiting to give. In the morning, Marcus woke to find Bella's head resting on the pillow next to his, her dark eyes watching him with complete trust and unconditional love. The scared, trembling dog from the shelter was gone, replaced by a companion who knew she was home at last. 6 months after Bella's adoption, the Thompson house buzzed with excited preparation. Marcus had asked if Bella could accompany him to the school's Bring Your Pet to School Day, a special event where students could share their beloved animals with classmates. It would be Bella's first real venture into the outside world beyond the veterinarian's office, and everyone was both nervous and excited. "Are you sure she's ready for this?" Jennifer asked as Marcus carefully fitted Bella with her new harness. The once fearful dog now stood patiently, tail wagging as Marcus spoke to her in soothing tones about their upcoming adventure. "She trusts me," Marcus said with quiet confidence, "and I think it's time for other people to meet the real Bella. Not the scared dog everyone always hears about." Dr. Rodriguez had given his approval for the outing, noting that Bella's anxiety medication had been successfully reduced to the lowest possible dose. More importantly, her behavior assessment showed a dog who had learned to cope with stress in healthy ways rather than shutting down completely. The car ride to school was a revelation. Instead of cowering in her carrier, Bella sat in the back seat with Marcus, looking out the window with curiosity rather than fear. She pressed close to Marcus when they passed a construction site with loud machinery, but she didn't panic. She had learned to seek comfort instead of hiding from the world. When they arrived at Roosevelt Middle School, Bella paused at the car door, taking in the unfamiliar sights and sounds. Children's voices echoed from the playground, doors slammed, and a lawnmower hummed in the distance. For a moment, Marcus worried they had overestimated her readiness. But then Bella looked up at him with those trusting dark eyes, and Marcus knew they would be fine. "It's okay, girl. I'm right here with you. We'll take it slow." The transformation that followed amazed everyone who witnessed it. As Marcus led Bella through the school hallways, she walked confidently beside him, her head up and tail wagging gently. When curious students approached, instead of cowering, Bella would step slightly behind Marcus but remain visible, allowing herself to be admired from a safe distance. Mrs. Patterson, Marcus's teacher, had heard the story of Bella's rescue and recovery. She watched in wonder as Marcus introduced Bella to his classmates, explaining her journey from fear to trust with the wisdom and compassion of someone far beyond his years. "Bella taught me that being patient isn't just waiting for something to happen," Marcus told his class. "It's believing that good things are worth waiting for, even when it takes a really long time." One of Marcus's classmates, a shy girl named Emma, who often ate lunch alone, was particularly drawn to Bella's story. "How did you know she would get better?" Emma asked quietly. Marcus thought carefully before answering. "I guess I didn't know for sure, but I could see in her eyes that she wanted to trust someone. She just needed to learn how. Sometimes people are like that too." Emma nodded thoughtfully, and Marcus noticed that she spent the rest of the day sitting closer to other students, as if Bella's courage had inspired her own. The highlight of the school visit came during recess, when Marcus sat under a tree with Bella while his classmates played nearby. Instead of being overwhelmed by the activity and noise, Bella seemed to enjoy watching the children. When a ball rolled near them, she even stood up and gently pushed it back toward the group with her nose, earning delighted cheers from the kids. "She wants to play," shouted Jake, and for a moment Marcus thought Bella might actually join the game, but she was content to be an observer, participating in her own way without pushing beyond her comfort zone. The success of the school visit opened up new possibilities for Bella's life. She began accompanying the family on short errands, walks around the neighborhood, and visits to the park. Each outing built her confidence and proved that the world, while sometimes challenging, was no longer a place to fear. Sarah from the animal shelter visited the Thompson home regularly, documenting Bella's recovery for case studies and training materials. "Bella has become our poster child for the power of patient, consistent love," she told Marcus during one visit. "Her story is helping us save other dogs who might have been considered too damaged to recover, but perhaps the most meaningful validation of Bella's transformation came from an unexpected source. Dr. Rodriguez asked if Marcus and Bella would consider visiting the animal shelter to help socialize other fearful dogs. The idea was that Bella's calm, confident energy might help other traumatized animals see that healing was possible. Their first volunteer visit to Happy Tails was emotional for everyone involved. When they walked into the shelter, several staff members who remembered Bella's condition couldn't believe their eyes. The trembling, terrified dog who had lived in the corner kennel for 6 months was now walking confidently through the same building, offering comfort to animals who were where she used to be. Marcus led Bella to the kennel area where the most fearful dogs were housed. They stopped in front of a cage containing Max, a senior dog who had been returned to the shelter 3 times due to his anxiety and fear of strangers. Max was pressed against the back wall, shaking and panting, looking exactly as Bella had months earlier. "Hi, Max," Marcus said softly, sitting down in the same cross-legged position he had used with Bella. "This is my dog Bella. She used to live here and she was really scared too. But look at her now." Bella seemed to understand her role instinctively. She lay down next to Marcus, calm and peaceful, showing Max through her body language that this place and these people were safe. Her presence had an immediate effect. Max's panting slowed and his ears perked up slightly as he observed this confident, relaxed dog who clearly trusted the humans with her. Over the following weeks, Marcus and Bella returned to the shelter regularly. They worked with fearful dogs, providing a living example that recovery was possible. Bella's gentle presence helped several dogs take their first steps toward trusting humans again. Marcus learned that helping others heal was just as rewarding as Bella's own recovery had been. 1 year after Bella's adoption, the Thompson family threw a gotcha day party to celebrate the anniversary of bringing her home. Friends, family, and several people from the animal shelter gathered in their backyard to honor Bella's journey and the love that had made it possible. As Marcus looked around at the celebration, watching Bella move confidently among the guests, accepting pets and attention from people she had never met before, he felt overwhelmed with gratitude. The scared broken dog who had hidden in the corner of a shelter kennel was now the center of a joyful celebration, surrounded by people who loved her. "You know what the best part is?" Marcus told Sarah as they watched Bella play gently with a neighbor's toddler. "She's not just my dog now. She's everyone's reminder that broken things can heal, that scared things can learn to be brave, and that love really can fix almost anything." Sarah wiped away tears as she watched Bella, confident and joyful, living the life they had all hoped for but hardly dared to dream possible. "She's not the same dog we rescued," Sarah said. "But then again, you're not the same boy who adopted her. You both grew into exactly who you were meant to be." As the party wound down and the last guests said their goodbyes, Marcus and Bella settled onto their favorite spot on the living room floor. Marcus pulled out a new book and Bella positioned herself beside him, ready for another story. But this time, as Marcus began to read, Bella rested her head directly on his lap, completely relaxed and trusting. They had come so far from that first day at the shelter when a frightened dog had touched a patient boy's heart. Now they were simply best friends sharing stories and dreams, proving that sometimes the most beautiful relationships begin with the courage to love something broken and the faith to believe it can heal. In the quiet of their home, surrounded by the warmth of family and the security of unconditional love, Marcus and Bella had found what they had both been searching for all along, a place where they could be exactly who they were, scars and all, and know that they were perfectly loved just as they were.